Thank you for joining us. My name is Barry Erickson, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator here at Wheaton Public Library. Jeff Gahris is a retired environmental engineer with a passion for protecting the environment for future generations. As an environmental advocate, he sees solar energy as part of an environmentally and economically viable solution to America's energy needs. He and his wife Bonnie have reduced electrical household demand substantially through energy efficiency and conservation measures, including installing solar panels on their own home. Jeff is also a Forest Preserve District Commissioner and is supporting the expansion of solar energy on preserved properties. His presentation tonight includes his personal solar story. So with that, I'm going to turn the screen over to you, Jeff. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Barry. It's certainly my pleasure to be here tonight. I've been doing this for at least 7 years. A group of us who were volunteers decided to help the Illinois Solar Energy Association, as it was called then, to promote solar energy and educate the public. So it's purely a voluntary effort, and none of us are experts at this. I mean, there are people who are professionals who work in this industry. So my hat's off to them because of the complexities they deal with. Let's see if I can advance the screen. Here we go. In this, you see two pictures here. On the left is Willowbrook Wildlife, where we are expanding solar in the forest preserves. And you're going to see examples of this around the county. You drive by and you see solar panels on a commercial building, perhaps. Often they're on the roof hidden from view, but it is expanding in various ways in the county. And but my focus tonight will be on residences. Like on the right, this home is in Wheat. It's near a park near the Prairie Path on the east side of Wheat. And this was when the house was first built. Now it has gardens in the front and back, vegetables and wild plants, very native plants. But the curious thing about this house is the fact that they were able to build it in a very energy efficient way. They don't even have natural gas. It's all electric, solar powered. They even have an electric car, which they're able to charge with these panels. So the guy who lives in this house is one of those professionals who knows how to make things cutting edge, and he works for a consulting firm. So this is an example of what we can all shoot for. Most of us can't get to this point. I certainly can't at this stage with the house we have. And but at any rate, I'll get into that later, but I just want to set a background story for you about solar policy in Illinois, where we are and where we're going. This will help inform your decisions about whether or not you want solar on your home and how it makes sense. As a matter of fact, there's actually some good news today. President Biden signed a bill. It will have a number of environmental programs that will arise from that passage of that bill, and that will include some federal incentives that would help homeowners who want to go solar. And I should mention ISEA is split into two parts in 2020. So it's now the education arm, which is a charitable 501c3, and then there's the trade association, which deals with the policy stuff in Springfield. And there certainly is a lot of work to do on the state level. Like right now, if you look at this energy mix in this pie chart, half of it is nuclear. At some point, this will be phased out. At some years down the road. We're keeping nuclear for a while because we need it, but at some point it might be phased. Some of the older plants will be closed, and so that's going to change the energy mix dramatically. The orange part of the pie is coal. We've been very heavily invested in coal in past years. That's starting to fade away. So now we're seeing more of the gray, which is natural gas, and the orange or light orange color, which is wind. And solar is this one of these little tiny pie, I think just light blue slice here. Important thing to realize is that slice of the pie is growing, and it's growing exponentially, or at least it has been through 2021. You can see there's been a big growth in installations of new solar energy in Illinois. So it's a growth industry. It has its ups and downs, but we've given some policy things that have come up in the last few years, I think we're in good shape in terms of having a viable industry that works. And so, that, of course, that begs the question, why would we go solar? And why is it so important? Well, for a lot of people, it's the environmental benefits, reducing carbon emissions. It improves environmental health because we're not relying on fossil fuels as much. It certainly creates jobs. It's something you can't outsource overseas. It's labor intensive here in our local communities. And homeowners like it because it saves money in their electric bill. Public agencies and businesses like it for the same reason. There is a good reason to believe it'll increase home value, particularly down the road when it becomes more popular in Illinois. It has certainly been very helpful in California. Of course, home values are increasing anyway in California, so it's a strange example. But in Colorado, I think they've had a similar experience where home values will go up just by installing solar. It's also an inexhaustible energy supply, and it's a steady thing. You don't have to worry about price fluctuations like you do with natural gas, for example. It's something that's very reliable, and I'll show you charts later to prove that. There are some common myths about solar, and this first one I fell for that myth as well. I thought I lived in a different home in Glen Ellen, and we thought we needed a south exposure on the roof. But then I found that there are installations where people can install panels in the east and west directions. I think south exposure is the best in terms of getting the most energy collected. Certainly solar panels do not cause roofs to leak. We have a number of penetrations in our roofs. So if you have a good roof and you could add solar without really increasing the risk of leaks, there's a technique for that. And so that's not an issue. It hasn't been an issue for me. Installing solar should not increase our property taxes. There's a form you can fill out if necessary to keep the tax assessors away. But legally, we're covered there. Now the weather is an issue sometimes in Illinois, but I think solar panels like it when it's cold if not covered with snow. But they can withstand all the abuse that unless a tornado hits your house, which that means you got other problems. But at any rate, but the weather is not an issue. They're very durable. We do get enough sun. I'll show you a chart on that in a minute. The utility will give us credits for extra power we produce, particularly in the summertime, or actually it's spring and fall is the best months when our energy supply exceeds what we use with solar energy. And there's a system where the utility can give us credit for that, but we don't get checks in the mail for extra energy we produce. The other question is, or myth is, it's too expensive. Well, it is expensive, but there are ways around that. So it's not too expensive. And I'll spend a few slides on that so you can see how it works for people financially. And if you have solar installed on your house and you own it free and clear, I think it can actually be better for house sales. Occasionally you run into realtors who don't understand how to sell solar. That's not in their wheelhouse, if you will. So it's still new to the real estate industry, but there's anecdotal evidence that it doesn't hurt to have solar on your panels or solar panels on your house when it comes time to sell. Now back to the weather a little bit, or the amount of sunshine. You can see here we have Alaska and Germany, which are very cloudy places, or like Seattle in the northwest part of the country. The blue means that there's a lot of clouds. The reddish color in the southwest, of course, that's the desert where we get a lot of sun. It's very hot there. It actually hurts solar production when it gets too hot. But Chicago is sort of in between. It's sort of like Spain in terms of sunshine. And we get a fair amount of sunshine here. So over the course of the whole year, it works. And there's a mechanism in place to make it work for us. So weather is not an issue. Meanwhile, we've had large power plants. We kind of migrated toward large power plants over the last century. And now due to emerging technologies, we're moving in the other direction. So you're going to see more distributed generation points, like homes or businesses where the solar can be integrated into the grid very effectively. And so I think that making a huge difference. It helps make it economic. It helps make the grid work well. And there is value added to have a distributed solar on the grid. And so what does solar look like? What we have basically, it's a fairly simple concept. You have solar, usually the solar panels are on the roof of your home because that's an easy out of the way place to put them. And they can be on garden structures or out in the yard, but usually there's no place for that. Most people don't have room unless they have a large pergola type thing over a patio, and they use the solar panels as sort of a shading, a way to provide shade for the patio. So that can happen, but usually due to the size of them, they're on the roof. Most homes can easily handle the weight of the solar panels on the roof. So you have the panels, they produce DC electricity like a battery would, but that's not usable for your household appliances. So you have to have an inverter that converts it from DC to AC. And then that's tied into the service panel, so you can distribute the electricity either to loads inside the home, or if you don't have a use for it, you just put it on the grid. And the electric meter can work both ways. It measures coming and going. I have a slide for that. And so that sets us up for something called net metering, which I think is a critical part of what makes solar viable. And so and again, net metering just simply means when the sunlight is converted to electricity, the energy goes into a home, the excess goes to the grid, and ComEd can keep track of the electricity, whether it's flowing in or out in real time with a smart meter. And so that's part of the billing. So it shows up on your bill, and I'll explain that. But there's also, we have annual changes over the course of the year. You'll notice that production is greater in the summer months because the days are longer, the sun is higher in the sky, it's maybe a more favorable angle with the sun hitting the panels. But the usage changes over time. So in the summer, the usage is very high because of air conditioning primarily. Most homes have air conditioning. It's also fairly high in the winter because you're running furnaces, furnace blowers, and things of that sort. There's more lights on, there's more people are indoors more. And so you have two peaks, summer and winter. And then in the fall and spring, the electric consumption drops. And if you combine these two together, what you see is there's surpluses of energy production during the fall and winter. And that's interesting because that's when you're putting a lot of energy on the grid, and you want to get credit for that. And so ComEd keeps track of that over the course of the year. And that's a very powerful tool because what it means is when you get to the bill, like here it shows the kilowatt hours coming off the grids, because at night you'd be using electricity at night. In the daytime, you're putting it on the grid, any excess. And so it's summarized here on your bill when you have solar. And what's really cool is you can see net metering credit. So you're producing more energy than you need. So that has a dollar value basically. So ComEd gives you a credit on your bill. And if you're using more than you need, you have a rollover. So here it's the hours that can roll over to the next month. And this is really important because what it means is as you go into the fall, your demand starts increasing at some point, toward winter at least. But meanwhile, your production is dropping off. So at some point, you're going to start paying for your electricity, and this rollover credit will roll over. And so you can keep reducing your bills for a while. And that really kind of helps as you go into winter when the bills go up. You would normally see the bills go up, but with solar, you won't. And it helps even it out. It's at some point, usually, I think it's usually early spring, ComEd will say, okay, we do this on an annual basis, so we're going to zero anything out. So if you have any balances, you might lose a little bit of credit, or you may have used up all your credits before you got to that point, which is what happens to me. So it does make the billing a little bit more complicated, but it's fun. You can look at how things change over time. And so I think this restates what I've been saying. You can see how, and this is an example of a real bill from another solar ambassador who his service was some taxes and fees he had to pay. You have to pay to be tied into the grid. There are certain services that ComEd is providing, and so they're very valuable to us. So we have to pay for some of that. So, $14 is a very livable thing. I think most people won't complain about a utility bill at $14, but that's the advantage of going solar. And there's some other enhancements to what we're doing. And there's a law that was passed called the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. We just call it CEJA, and it builds on previous legislation. And so this sets certain goals. So not only does this help protect the concept of net metering, but it does, because the state of Illinois has some policy goals, they're interested in encouraging people to go solar, and there are certain financial incentives. It gets a little bit complicated. Now, there's also federal incentives too. There's some good news today on that. The state incentives involve something called SRECs, or Solar Renewable Energy Certificates or credits. And it's based on how much energy we're producing. So every time we produce 1 megawatt hour of solar energy, which it takes a period of time to do that, then that has monetary value. But what we're doing is monetizing the environmental benefits of the legislation, or of the solar generation. And so what we're doing is we're setting into a contractual agreement that when we produce this energy, we'll get payments. We'll get some subsidies, if you will, these SREC payments, and they add up to quite a bit. One interesting thing about CEJA is they changed the way it works so that you get the payment up front, even before you generate the energy. So you get 15 years worth of SREC payments early on in the process of having solar. So it takes a little while to get those payments, but it really can affect how you finance solar, or how you want to approach this financially. And it can add up to 30% of your installation cost. Now, in addition to that, we have federal incentives, the investment tax credit. And these are pretty powerful. This is a pretty powerful tool as well, because what it means is you calculate your taxes, and then you subtract the percentage of your installation cost, and you subtract that from your tax liability. So you may find that this credit exceeds the amount of tax you owe, and you can even roll that over. So you will be paying taxes for a couple of years, perhaps, depending on the size of your system. But this had been stepping down. I think the thought was solar energy would become more and more competitive with fossil fuels, and we won't need this investment tax credit. But Congress very recently decided we need to extend this, because we really want to promote solar energy in the United States. We want to speed it up. And so it was thought that by 2023, the percentage of the investment tax credit was going to drop down to 22%. But I think starting this forward, moving from here on forward, it'll be at 30%. And this might last for 10 years. There's a certain fairly long period of time. So what that means is, we've got even more incentives to go solar. And so the SRECs, I think, this is unique to Illinois. It's an Illinois program. I mean, other states might do it, but this is tailored to Illinois' needs. It encourages us to install solar, and we get the payments. And again, the 15-year incentive up front has really kickstarted an interest in solar in Illinois. I think that created over the last couple of years a lot of installations. And here's an idea of what some of the values are. I don't think this table is rather complex, but it covers the whole state. So we're in Group B, which involves ComEd, and for every megawatt of energy you produce, you get paid, say, roughly $65. And so this program is moving forward. Prices have been changing over time. This table might actually be out of date now because of CEJA. They've made some changes, and so we're going to see some new figures. But when you talk to a solar installer, they will be up to date on all this stuff. They'll be able to explain to you how this is working and what and they would do a cost analysis for you. And the adjustable block program is that's the expression they use to explain the SREX. Different people get different pots of money. There's pots of money that are allocated to different things. And so the adjustable block program really gets broken up into community solar, which I'll cover tonight, schools, certain community-driven projects that are involving equity, which the Solar for All program, and of course, small distributed generation, which would be us, the homeowners who have smaller systems. So I went through a lot there. So I was wondering, Barry, if you had any questions at this point.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm just wondering, and maybe you'll provide this later, is there a particular source or link that we can provide where people can find a lot of that information about those incentives?
Well, yeah, the Illinois Solar Energy website, the association website will have some links.
Okay, and that's one of the links that you gave me, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I'll be sending that out later. And I'm just wondering, and again, maybe you're going to cover this later, but is there kind of an average number of years that people live in their home after installing the solar system before it's kind of paid off?
Well, I have a system that is paying itself off in about 10 years, but some people are getting it down to 5 years. It depends on the installation.
Okay.
And the cost of installing have been dropping over a few years. It's not dropping right now because there's some supply disruptions and there's inflation affecting everybody. And so that might affect this industry a little bit. And but what they do is they look at the cost for your installation. They look at the energy production and how much you would save, from not paying ComEd. And so homeowners are being told that they can get a simple payback period to be, say, in the 5 to 10 year period, depending on the installation. And for most people, that's enough because they know they know they'll probably be living there for that period of time. And I think there's some comfort in knowing that if you sell the home, you might get a slight bump in the value of the home that might help pay for whatever it is you didn't get paid off. So,
Right. Okay.
so it works. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I was just looking for kind of a ballpark there. That's
Yes.
wonderful. All right. Well, we'll let you go ahead and move on with the presentation. But just a
Okay.
reminder to everyone to open up that Q&A and enter any questions you might have. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Well, anyway, you endured the hardest part, perhaps, of the whole program, all the financial stuff, the incentives. And so basically in the process, you need to have people come out and look at your home. Hopefully they'll come on site. There are a number of companies in the area, and I don't promote any particular one. I don't get any checks in the mail because I help somebody get a contract. But what you do is you talk to local contractors who've been around for a while. You look for one who you might feel comfortable with, and you look at how they approach your home and what engineering solution they would have and their ability to explain it to you in English. And once you get to the point where you're choosing somebody, they will ask you to sign an interconnection agreement. They need to see your utility bill to do an analysis first. And then they have to start a permitting process. Now it has taken 30 to 60 days in the past. I think in Wheaton it took at least a month to process permits. I think that's getting shorter now. I think they're finding ways to streamline this in most municipalities. We still have the issue of material delivery, and I think in the past it was 2 weeks. Sometimes it's longer. Like the Forest Preserve District has solar panels being installed at a facility on Mack Road. It's being held up because the inverters, the boxes that convert the energy from DC to AC are in back order. And so there's a shortage of inverters right now. So it's possible that when you get into this, maybe an installer has stockpiled some supplies, knowing that there'd be shortages. But sometimes they get caught off guard And so there might be a delay. So I guess we all have to be patient with that, with regardless what kind of project we're working on. But once they solve all those problems, the material usually shows up and then they install it pretty quickly. So within a week, I mean, for me, they were on the roof about 2 days. They were interrupted by a thunderstorm. Had to chase them off the roof because lightning was getting close. But once but then they spend a day doing interior electrical work. And the only last step after that is you should have an inspection. For me, it was very perfunctory. A guy came through with a checklist, and it was already energized even before he came by. So in some communities, you can't turn the thing on until they pass the inspection. So, so expect it to take a few months. It's probably quicker than a bathroom remodel because I think it's fairly standardized, and it's probably easier than a bathroom remodel. And then if you're planning to get into in that stage where you're talking to contractors, you can play with some numbers if you want. You can see, well, how much energy do I need? How much can I produce with a solar system on my roof? And there's some tools online you can play with. ISCA has a solar calculator. One thing that should be on this is Google has, I think it's, I'm forgetting the name of it, but Google can produce a map if you go to the right web page, and it shows how much sunlight is hitting your house. ComEd, I think, also has some good solar information. I would suggest going to ComEd's solar web pages, and you can actually they actually have a page where you can do a calculation to show how much it might cost for your home, just a ballpark figure. So there are various resources out there. Here to find the professional tool, this is the page we have where you can look at finding a professional in your area. Say it's the Wheaton area, so you can go say, let's go 30 miles out. Who within 30 miles of us is in the solar installation business? And you can focus in on residential, for example, and you can find some names and you can call them. So these are helpful tools. Another question that comes up as well, how do you finance it? Do you pay cash up front? For me, I was able to do that because I don't have a particularly expensive system. But I think it gives you the quickest financial return if you can afford to pay for it up front. And then you get the incentives. And then the next thing you know, the cost is not what you thought it would be. It's cheaper than buying a car by far. Now, if you have a larger system you want to install and the cost is getting up there a bit, even after the incentives, you can consider a bank loan. There's traditional loans, home equity loans could be a very good way because you're actually investing in the home. And so a home equity loan might be a good way to go. Some of the installers do have the ability to offer financing packages that are customized for the solar energy that take into consideration the solar investment tax credit, or even the SREC payments you get through CEJA. You can sort of plan on getting a sizable check in the mail, so that might help you plan how you're going to manage the loan, how you're going to pay it off. And so there's some clever ways of doing that. There's also, if you join the Illinois Solar Education Association, and you become a member, you can be eligible for a clean energy credit union service where they can provide loans that are specific for clean energy. So they're sort of tailored for the needs of people who are going solar. I haven't tried that. I'm not involved with that credit union, but it's just another option. And also another option is not to own it at all. And you can, and this is, I think, popular in some neighborhoods. I go to Glendale Heights. There's a number of homes up there that are very well suited for solar. And I think there's been some marketing up there. There's a ton of solar installations on homes for people with average income. And I think what they're doing is they're involved with a power purchase agreement or a solar lease. And the power purchase agreement means, well, in both cases, somebody comes in and puts the panels on your roof, but you don't own the panels, they do. but they're getting all the SREC payments and the investment tax credits. And so what they want to do, or what they need to do, is pass some of those savings on to you. So suddenly you have something on your roof, but your bills go down. But you didn't have to pay for it up front. You just get lower bills. And one way to do that is to have a power purchase agreement where you're paying for the price as you use the electricity. The solar lease, I think they just estimate what your need is for the year, and then they give you just a monthly bill. They take that annual bill, and it's like an annual thing, and they divide it by 12. And so you're making the same payment every month. So it's like a leasing fee. And based on what they think you will be doing with your energy consumption. A power purchase agreement might make more sense to me personally, because I understand it better. But at any rate, that is an option that some people pursue, because they have other things to do with their money right now. Like they might want to be planning a trip to Europe, or they're putting a kid through college, or something is getting in the way. And the option of having a third party, owning something on your roof becomes very appealing to a lot of people. Now I'll get into my solar story. Is there any more questions, Barry, just at this point?
Yes, actually, we do have a couple of questions, and maybe this will be a good transition for you. Someone is asking, should you put a new roof on the house before installing solar panels?
Well, I did. And I think, and I was kind of lucky in the sense that I had a roofer in mind who's Spandekow Roofing in Glen Ellen. I don't know if he's the best roofer company in town, but that company's been around a while and has a good reputation. And I talked to them about the roof and my plans of putting in solar, and they are very accommodating. As you can see, this was an older roof on the left side. It was not very attractive. It was nearing the end of its useful life, and there was and the home inspector highlighted a couple issues with it. So we just went ahead. When we bought the home, we just replaced the replaced the shingles before we installed solar. And you can see where there's guys standing there in the middle on bare boards. The boards were in good shape. Normally they put down some sort of tar paper or something, but he put down this ice and water shield. You can see it in the over here in the valley of the roof near the chimney. And they put more of that over here when the solar panels were going, just as additional insurance to prevent leakage. It probably wasn't necessary, but I was willing to spend a few $100 more for that. And then they mounted these, the solar installer company came and mounted these brackets. They slide underneath the shingles. There's flashing, it goes underneath. And there's some rubber insulation around the large screw that goes into the joist. So they mount them where there's wood underneath, so you have a firm connection. And so that's worked out very well. So, there's one more question you said, Barry. We should answer that before we go on.
Well, maybe it makes sense to answer it here. What do you need room for inside the house? They're asking if perhaps you need some sort of battery, or do you need a new electrical panel besides the panels that go on the outside?
Okay, well, see, we can answer that as I go through the next couple of slides here, see if I have a picture. Well, here's the rails on the roof that are attached to those brackets. So these metal rails are what you attach the solar panels to. Here's an idea of how big the panels are. These were premium quality panels because I didn't have a large amount of room to work with. And so I felt constrained. So I got the best panels that I could get quoted for. And so these are Panasonic panels. They're very high efficiency and they're fairly large. You'll see some homes with somewhat smaller panels. They may not be the premium quality, but it's just a matter of how the situation works where you're given home setup. So, and in here, just to show you the equipment, the inverter, we have one inverter. We have 8 solar panels, and they're sort of tied up in a string like a Christmas lights. And this one inverter converts energy for all of them. And it's in the laundry room inside the home. We decided it was easier to sort of monitor what's going on from the inside. But you can, that thing is weatherproof, so I could have had it put back on the back wall here, but there's a patio nearby, and we have enough clutter with conduit as it is, old stuff here too. So, so there's not a whole lot of room in it. We don't have batteries, and most homes don't have batteries because batteries are still expensive. It could double the cost of your whole installation. And some people, I know some solar ambassador in Carroll Stream who wanted a battery system backup for at least for short-term power outages. I think they had a power outage for several hours, and the batteries held up nicely, for providing energy for your refrigerator, or your sump pump in case you had a storm event and you had to pump water out of the house. So it provided them some measure of security. And the batteries are quiet; they don't make noise like the natural gas generators do, or the portable things that people drag around. And so they're less polluting, much quieter, but it's still a little bit on the expensive side. So it's a growing. I think it's a growing story. I think we're an emerging story, I believe, for batteries. I think right now it's crunch time for finding resources for batteries because utility companies are buying batteries because they want to create ways of short-term storage of energy. Because what's nice about batteries is if something goes offline in the way of a power plant, the batteries can provide instant adjustments to the grid much quicker than natural gas turbines. And so there's a growing interest in buying batteries. And we have a growing interest in finding out where we're going to mine lithium and other materials needed to make batteries. So that's that's a problem. And I think maybe in some ways it's a nice problem to have because we're trying to shift to a clean energy economy and we're struggling to figure out the best way to do it. But for the homeowner, batteries, most people who have batteries are higher income people because they think it's cool and it might work for them financially, but and it might suit their individual needs. One other thing to note is there's not a whole lot on the backside. Besides that, this is the meter. We had this upgraded because it was pretty out of date before. I don't think I have a picture of the load center inside the home. I think ours was adequate. Sometimes you go to older homes, they have to change out where the circuit breakers are. You have to have room. Let's see if I include it. I should normally have that picture of that in there, but I think it is important to make sure that when somebody's looking at your home to consider installing solar, that they know what's going on with the load center. Make sure that your service panel, if you will, has enough capacity to add new circuits because they need some more circuit breakers. And so that's an important thing to consider. So I think that covers that part of the story. Now, what's interesting about, I think what's reliable about solar energy is, yes, you have cloudy days. Like, was it yesterday, the day before, we had this dark, heavy clouds, which was hard to explain in August. It looked more like November weather. So you have those days, but overall, you can see this almost like a bell curve where it kind of rises up and down. And every year you have variations from month to month. But this is like a 4-year time period for our system at our home. And you notice how consistent it is. And we're in August now, and the days are starting to get shorter now, and it shows up. It's a gradual thing. December and January can be pretty rough. Some winters, we get a heavy wet snow and then it freezes in place. But often you get a snow where it slides off the panels. And so you can still produce energy in the winter. So that's one of the challenges of the solar industry in general. As we go with more solar in the United States, we have to have other sources of energy. That includes the other things in the pie chart at the beginning, whether it's natural gas or wind. Wind is becoming a big factor here because we can rely on wind. And we're also, I think, our Congressman Sean Casten has been working on improving the grid, so making it easier to bring in energy from other states if need be. Because I think in the last decade or so, we've been producing more energy than we need. So Illinois was an exporter of energy to other states. And you see what happened in Texas last winter, and then this summer they got almost got into trouble because they're kind of isolated from the rest of the country. So if we interconnect the grids better, we can get all the energy we need, even if solar is not producing or wind is not producing or something else is not producing. So we are improving the grid, and that's going to be a key component as we move forward. But I just like the fact that overall, I know what I'm dealing with on my home. I know that I'll be producing energy like this year to year in a fairly reliable way. And by the way, the solar panels we should be doing this for 20, 30 years without much degradation to performance. So eventually I could see down the road, if we're still living here, that something better will come along and we might want to consider replacing the panels, but that's going to be years away. So in summary, here's what it looks like. It's a fairly compact array of panels in the back of the house. And we could have added more, but it would have been running conduit over to some other area and it wouldn't have been as attractive. There's a garage roof that we could have used, but one installer said you should put it on the other side of the garage. But our neighbor has apple trees there, so that are getting bigger. And so here for me, it was just $11,000 was the upfront cost, which is not a whole lot of money for that size and for that time period. And after the incentives that were available then, we almost cut the cost in half. So it'd be very hard to buy a car at $4,600 these days. But still, it was a 10 years, simple payback period. And it produces 75% of what we need, actually, which is good news because we're not a heavy energy user. So there's two of us in a smaller home. And I mentioned dark sky friendly lighting as somebody's suggestion because, we tend to light up the outdoors sometimes. And so there's a penalty we pay. We're using energy all night long. And I think it's important to think about energy efficiency. One of the things you could do if you're thinking about solar is there some way to cut the energy consumption? Is there something going on that's wasteful? Is your AC an old system and on its last legs? And if you replace that, you may find you can reduce your energy use in the summer or some other things. ComEd had an NICOR have a program where they can change out your light bulbs if you still have incandescence and do that for free. And the lighting has gotten a lot better, by the way. And so, and if none of this works, there's always community solar, which I want to go into next, because some of you are wondering, I've got trees covering my yard. In this case, there was an ash tree, and before we moved in, the ash tree was removed because it had the ash borer. So all of a sudden, there's all this sunshine here, enough for growing vegetables and everything. So, so what we did, because we had only 75% of our energy being locally produced, we looked around for a company that would give us access to solar energy from another location. We finally found a company that would be interested in a contract for a small amount of additional energy. So that's the next part of my story that I'm still exploring, but I have some slides on that. Is there any more questions, Barry?
Well, I think you answered the question about what might need to be installed inside the house and how much room that might take. If someone has a follow-up question, go ahead and enter that in the Q&A. But there is one more question about the panels. They are black and they do probably get hot, we're imagining. Are they putting heat into the atmosphere?
Probably not more than the asphalt driveway we have coming up to the house. It's similar to that. And the roof, it's a reddish roof color, which is amazing how hot even the lighter color roof will be. So yeah, it probably does add a little bit to the heat. I don't know if there is enough of it being installed to make a difference. But one thing I want to mention is we don't lay it. I think there's a company that was installing them directly against the house, like flat onto the roof. But if you see here carefully, there's a little bit of a gap, like about 4-inch gap underneath, so that air could flow underneath. which helps, channel the heat away so the panels don't get too hot. These panels are fairly good at dealing with heat. One thing they found out about solar panels is that they tend to lose a little bit of efficiency as they get hotter. So hot panels really aren't a good thing. But I don't think they're that much hotter. They do get hot, but they're probably not much worse than the asphalt driveway or the shingles themselves.
Okay, and kind of a follow-up question with that, it doesn't, because of perhaps that gap, it's not causing the attic to overheat?
No, no, because the heat tends to rise. The attics get hot because, well, there is some radiant heat going downward. And they found that at least underneath there's shingles underneath the panels, and those shingles actually are cooler because the panels are absorbing the sunlight and not the shingles themselves. So that might actually cool the roof at that point. And because they're detached from the roof, the heat is not radiating into the attic as much. We also made improvements to the attic ventilation. I think what we had before, there was we had these soffit vents, and they were covered up. Somehow there was no ventilation here, and so we had a contractor put in holes so the air could flow into the attic, and then we had the roofer put in a ridge vent at the top. So there's a little gap at the top, so the air would be like a chimney. So the air was flowing through the attic from the bottom to the top. And so I think it's a cooler roof now than it was before.
Okay.
And also a previous owner, I'm not sure who it was, had put in they had sealed the attic, because attics often have leaks. The air inside the home leaks into the attic. And that creates a problem in the sense that, that's part of the chimney effect. You don't want to take the conditioned air inside the home and have it sucked up into the attic. So you're either sucking out air conditioned air or you're sucking out heated air in the wintertime. So somebody came in and sealed those leaks, and then they added more insulation. So the house energy bills were, I think, enhanced that way, and it makes the home a little bit more comfortable. The house still has work to do because it was built in 1953, and so I've run into some limitations with insulation on the walls. But we have a fairly well ventilated attic, so I think the roof isn't super hot right now, which is a good thing. That'll help extend the life of the shingles.
Right. I think that's all of our questions for now. So let's go
Okay.
ahead and let you finish up.
Okay, great. And community solar, I think, is a new thing. I think it's amazing because a lot of people I talk to, they really want solar bad for whatever reason, but I find out they have all these trees around their home, and they slump down and say, "Oh, I wish I could do something." And this is actually the solution. Community solar, it really is larger scale facilities, usually in rural areas. There's an exception to that, but most all the time they're in rural areas. And they could be, and then for us, it means somewhere in ComEd service territory. This does not apply if you live in Naperville, by the way, or certain towns that have municipal or co-op utilities. And so my presentation is really geared toward ComEd customers. So community solar, it could be anywhere in ComEd service territory. It could be 50 miles away. And the one I'm using is down by Coal City, just south of the metro area. And it's still under construction. It's not quite done yet. But when these are built, people can subscribe. They can enter into contracts. They tend to be long-term contracts. And that sounds like a negative thing, but it's not entirely negative. I'll explain that. Now, what's nice is the systems do not have to be located nearby. They can be anywhere. And what's really cool is you can get an energy credit on your bill. I'll show you what a bill would look like. And it would be as if you had solar on your home. It would be a similar looking bill, but it would be, the solar panels would be somewhere else. Now, community solar is meant to be community oriented. So there's nobody could come in and say, I'm going to take all the energy from this solar farm. nobody can take more than 40%. So you could have a commercial customer come in and be like an anchor subscriber, and then everybody else has to be little guys like us. And so I think that's really cool. It makes you feel like you're part of something. And but the key thing is knowing how much you need. And anybody that you sign up with will want to know, well, how much do you need? It can't be too much, really, because it doesn't work to pay for energy you don't need. And the billing gets a little bit complicated, at least right now. You're going to get two bills instead of one. You get a bill from ComEd that's adjusted. Then you get a bill from the community solar company. And so you pay for whatever you need, and then the output of each, you get a report on how much you're using and how much you're using from that. And then the company takes the credits and makes adjustments. And so the community solar billing operation with the company will work with ComEd. So it's a complex thing that goes on behind the scenes, but they figure out how much you're using from the community solar farm. And here's an example of how much you might save. It's you're not getting rich doing this. What it is just it's just a way to save some money while going solar. And so in this example, the electric bill might be $56 just for the energy portion. And then you have these other things that they add on you see in a typical bill. So your total bill might be $109 for a given month. But if you had community solar, ComEd would say, okay, you used 800 kilowatt hours, but 714 was something you subscribed to through this community solar operation, this solar farm. And so since you are going to get billed for that by the solar provider, we're going to subtract that amount from our bill. And so you're only paying the $6 difference here. And then you're still paying the usual delivery fees and taxes and so on. But so ComEd's bill would be dropped by $50. However, the solar provider will send you a bill, but they're going to do something kind of clever. They're going to say, well, we were getting all these SREC payments and investment tax credits, and we might get really nice credits depending on how the incentive programs are set up. And so we're making a lot of money, but we're going to share some of that with you. So they're going to charge you only $40. So in this example, you're saving 10 bucks out of 109. So that's not a huge discount, at least in this example. Now, if you're a big energy user, that adds up quicker. But they usually offer a 20% discount on the energy portion of your bill. The only downside is you have two bills instead of one. And then I think in the future, there's going to be efforts to combine those into one bill. And so you might just get one bill from ComEd. And which is what we're used to seeing if you sign up for alternative retail electric suppliers in the past. Some of them are usually, if you listen to the CUB or the Citizens Utility Board, they will tell you that there's some bad deals out there. But the good news is with community solar, it's more tightly regulated by the CEJA law. And so what that means is you're going to actually get the 20% discount. There's no hidden fees. There's nothing coming down the road that will surprise you. The only thing that might surprise you is when you sign up for it, the solar farm may not be built yet, or maybe partially built. And so it may be a few months before you're actually seeing these benefits. So, but I think it's a good deal overall. And CUB likes community solar. They also have a web page to describe it. I think they have the best information. So you go to solar in community solar, no, solar in our community, I think is the phrase. So you find that web page. And I don't know, Barry, if I gave that particular reference to you, but I can certainly share it.
Yeah, I don't think you did, but I just jotted it down and I'll try to include it in the email tonight.
Because they vet some of the companies that are out there and they say these companies look legitimate. And so CUB is a very strong consumer advocacy group. And they've been doing battles with some characters out there who weren't so friendly to the consumer. And So I trust what they say. And so you can look at that page and see that there are some deals out there that look legitimate. So that's an option if you don't have access to a roof, like if you live in an apartment or condo where you don't own the roof, you don't have legal rights to the roof, and a lot of people don't, or you have large trees or something else going on. So this is a good option. And the bill is a little bit more complicated. It's sort of like you have a section here in peach color. It actually tells you the name of the solar farm. So that's what I like about this is you don't some people who are selling electricity in the past, they would say, oh, we got green energy. So, and they charge you a premium. And you're buying SRECs, if you will, and or wind RECs, as you call them. And here it's like you're actually part of a development of a new energy supply, and you're benefiting from it, and you know something about it. It's real, it's tangible, even though it's 50 miles away. And you get some credits on your bill the same way as like having it on your roof. It kind of looks similar. It's not quite as strong of a cost saver as having it on your roof, because having it on your roof, you're getting all the benefits from the subsidies and whatnot. You just have to invest heavy up front, and you have to have a suitable roof. So, and then this is Ameren. You know, I think I didn't need to have that in here. But the other thing worth mentioning, if you have, if you're in a situation where you have low income, you're below a certain level with in terms of income, or you know people who are, or there's certain communities where they have a lot of people that are considered low income, or environmental justice areas, or there are certain communities where they're heavily reliant on coal, and they're going to be, if coal is phasing out, there's going to be programs to help people to learn how to find jobs in the solar industry, for instance. And so there will be some opportunities. This includes job training and some community-based projects, like in the inner cities. And some of these programs, these low-income programs, are very good because the SREC payments are much higher. There's stronger incentives, and it's a small piece of the pie, but it's important, I think, for Illinois lawmakers to have that piece in there. So you might see some projects that are very useful for anybody you know that's low income. They might be able to sign up to get some very low rates on their electric bills. So, and to summarize, we've been talking for a while, but we do have the professional tool to find a professional tool on our webpage for illinoissolar.org. I do suggest membership is a possibility if you're really into solar energy and you think it's great and you're fascinated by it, or you might want to think about a career. Joining the ISCA is an option, and gives you access to that credit union if you're interested in that. And I encourage you to explore the educational pages and to learn about what I've been saying, because I feel like I can't explain it in a way that's crystal clear, because some of this stuff takes a while to sink in. You have to read it a couple of times, like, oh, that's how it works. This is how it could benefit me. So, but I think Illinois is a great state to be for solar energy. It's happening in other states too, but Illinois is becoming a leader, and so that means we have advantages here as homeowners. And see, I think that's a repeat. And you can reach me at contact.isca@illinoissolar.org, or just to ask a question in general. Somebody will get back to you. And if you ask for me, somebody will connect me to the conversation. And Barry, you can probably give people my email address too. I can email that, my personal email address. I can send that to you.
Okay. Yes, I have all of those links
Oh, okay.
that you sent, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Okay, super.
Yeah. And so we'll give people just another minute or two to enter any questions that they might have. But just as a reminder, we'll be sending out a number of different links in an email later tonight to everyone who's registered for the
Mhm.
program so that they can access all this great information.
Yeah.
Really interesting, especially I was intrigued by that community solar program. That was
Mhm.
really interesting. I
Yeah.
hadn't heard anything about that before.
It's been tried in other states. I think it was popular in Minnesota for a number of years. In Colorado, it was, and I think people looked at that and said, "Well, this might work for Illinois," and so it's becoming popular. There was a program to pass out these financial incentives to solar developers to build these solar farms in this category for community solar. And the demand far exceeded the supply of financial incentives. So they had to do a lottery thing. Nobody knew what was being built when. And so that happened for a few years. It was a bit confusing. And then, but I'm thinking now things are becoming a little bit more subtle. There's projects coming online and there's a high demand for it. The tricky part, it might be finding a company that's taking subscriptions because it takes a while to get these things sited and permitted. It's more complicated than a residential installation. It takes them a couple of years to get them going.
Right. Well, but I think I saw
Yeah.
a couple as I was driving with my daughter from
Mhm.
Missouri to Illinois. So hopefully we'll see more of these. Really an interesting concept.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you
So,
so
yeah.
thank you so much, Jeff. We really appreciate your time in putting this together for us. Again, I'll be
Yeah.
sending out lots of links to get more information to everyone who's registered for tonight's program. If you are watching the recording of this program and would like those links, please email me
Mhm.
at ce@wheatonlibrary.org. That's CE for community engagement at wheatonlibrary.org, and I'd be happy to send
Yeah.
those out to you. So with
And
that, oh,
yeah,
go
one point
ahead,
I'd
Jeff.
like to make is it's not really the end. If somebody wants to reach out to me with questions, I've helped a number of people navigate this and inspired some people to go solar. So a number of my friends have done it. So it takes a while. I mean, you tend to want to kick the tires for a few months,
Well,
but
thank you, Jeff. That's very generous. So
mhm.
I'm sure people will be getting in touch with you to get some more information. But
Okay,
with
be
that,
glad
I
to
think
help.
thank you. So I think with that, we'll say good night. Take care, everybody, and hope to see you again soon. Good night.